You skipped the workout again. The food didn't go as planned yet again. And you hear that voice loud and clear, pointing out all of the ways that you have failed yourself one more time. You're feeling upset, angry, and even frustrated with yourself. It's like, why can't I just get it together? Why do I always do this to myself? You start a new diet, a new program, you feel motivated and ready to do it for real this time. Then, as it always does, life happens. Things get in the way, it doesn't go perfectly. It's like first you start slipping up just a little bit here and there, and then it slowly becomes more and more until one day you're just like, screw it. And you give up altogether. The worst part about all of this is how disappointed you feel in yourself, how frustrated, how angry you are. You might kind of nurse your wounds for a few days and then you're like, man, okay, I'm ready to hit it again. I'm ready to get started. I'm going to be even more strict, even more focused, even more disciplined next time. You think that being hard on yourself is the only way. You've probably been told that being hard on yourself is what keeps you disciplined. Today, I'm going to show you why that's actually the thing keeping you stuck and what the research says works instead. What if that harsh little voice in your head isn't the reason you stay consistent? What if it's actually the reason you keep quitting? Today, we're talking about the actual antidote. So, if you've ever beaten yourself up after a setback or a missed workout or a day off of eating, thinking it would make you try harder next time, this episode is for you because the research actually says the opposite is true. Let's dive in. Do you find yourself constantly grabbing convenience food or hitting the drive-thru because of your busy schedule? Are you tired of your clothes not fitting and wish you felt more like yourself again? Does the word diet make you cringe because of past failed attempts that left you hungry and deprived? I'm Alisha, a wife, mom, fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle coach for women. After years of dieting, losing, and regaining the same weight, I realized I needed a new approach. I was burnt out from trying to be everything to everyone and chasing a number on the scale. To truly show up as the wife and mom I wanted to be and to finally find freedom in my health meant redefining my relationship to food, exercise, my body, and most importantly, to myself. I discovered the power of brain-based nutrition, fitness, habits, and routines to create a healthy lifestyle without restriction or deprivation. And now I'm excited to share everything I've learned with you. If you're ready to follow a simple brain-based nutrition and fitness plan built on habits and routines designed for busy moms and women, you're in the right place. Let's do this together. To actually get yourself to follow through, to stick with what you said you'll do. The crazy thing is, the harsher, the more strict, the more you have to force yourself to do it, the less likely you think being hard on yourself is the only way to actually get yourself to show up and to follow through. The harsher, the more strict, the more you force yourself, the more likely you are to actually stick with it. The research, though, and what I have seen in my clients in real time actually says the opposite. That belief isn't just wrong. It is likely the thing that is keeping you stuck in that same start and stop cycle over and over and over again. It's this lie or this belief that if I go easy on myself, I'll get lazy, I'll get unmotivated, I'll just stop caring, and I'll throw the towel in altogether. This idea comes from all over the place. We see it all the time in kind of that overt diet culture messaging and hustle culture. Maybe it was a message that was either overtly or more subliminally taught to us as kids that, if we aren't pushing ourselves, if we aren't kind of cracking the whip, then we're just going to not do anything. The real question here is not, should I be nice to myself, but really what is actually going to produce kind of this willing spirit in me, this desire to show up and to be consistent. I work with women in this exact place all the time. And when we first start working together, so many of them are so hard on themselves. They have these high expectations, these big goals, which those in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. But a lot of times there's something underneath that. It's like perfectionism. It's that all or nothing. It really is their self-worth, their identity, their value as human beings being tied to their performance and the way that they show up. Ironically, as we start to work together, the less harsh and the less strict they are with themselves, the more consistent they actually become, the more they actually want to show up for themselves and to follow through and to stick with it. It's kind of like parenting a child. And if you don't have your own kids or if you're not a mom yet, then this might not land quite the same, but I think it'll still kind of click and make sense. Of course, you can parent a child out of fear. You can be really strict. You can really try to enforce like all these super tight boundaries and rules and things like that. And for a little while, you might get a child to obey because of that. Likely, it's not going to happen for long. There's going to be a point where the kid starts to want to rebel against that kind of harsh parenting, right? And at the very least, relationally, mentally, emotionally, there's going to be some damage left from that kind of parenting style. It's the exact same thing when you are parenting yourself from that place. When it's like, I just have to be hard. I just have to be, kind of that slave driver. I can't let up because if I do, I'll just completely quit. But we know that that's exhausting. If you've ever operated from that place, it is extremely exhausting. And eventually you just want to rebel. You just want to give up because it's like no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough. You're never going to be doing it to that level or that expectation that you think you should be doing. Now, if anything that I've said to this point sounds eerily familiar or it's exactly where you are feeling stuck right now, we do have a few spots open for our one-to-one coaching. You can book a completely free, no pressure consult. The link will be in the show notes below, or you can go to the Strong Her Way /work with us to learn a little bit more about that. Okay. So we know from research and maybe even our own kind of lived experience that harsh voice doesn't work. What then? Like, what's the alternative to that? We're going to kind of talk a little bit about some research that's come from Kristin Neff's 3-component model on self-compassion. And it really tends to be some of the most cited framework in the research in this area out there. So a lot of times when we are thinking about self-compassion or being a little bit kinder with ourselves, we can misread that as being maybe self-indulgent or just being lazy or kind of giving yourself an easy out. In Neff's research and in that framework, she has these kind of 3 mindsets or 3 approaches, if you will. The first one is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So we could really kind of sum this up in talking to yourself in the same way that you would talk to a friend who has maybe messed up or didn't do the best job. I think it's important to note here that having kindness for yourself or for other people isn't necessarily the same thing as just letting them or letting yourself completely off the hook, right? We can still be loving, we can still be kind to ourselves and to others while also maintaining some boundaries or having some accountability, right? It's not just, okay, we missed the workout. Okay, we haven't been like at all focusing on our food or our habits or anything like that. Oh, well, no big deal. That's really not like a loving way to approach other people and other relationships. It's also not a very loving or respectful way to approach ourselves. Now, kind of the flip to being kind to yourself a lot of times is really going to that complete extreme opposite of being really harsh and really critical, nitpicking and pointing out all of your failures, all of the ways that you have fallen short or all of the ways that the other person has fallen short and has failed. Now, we know that that's not really going to be a great way to have a healthy relationship with somebody else. It's also not going to be a great way for you to establish a healthy relationship with yourself. And the crazy thing is like the better your relationship is with you, a lot of times the better your relationships with other people end up being as well. The second part of her framework is common humanity versus isolation. So this is really just recognizing that we are human. We are not perfect. We're never going to be able to do anything perfectly. That struggles, setbacks, imperfections are really just a part of our journey as human beings. This is not evidence that you are completely broken, that there's something wrong with you. It's just recognizing that all of us are going to miss the mark. All of us are going to fall short. All of us are going to make mistakes from time to time, and not just isolating yourself as being a failure or like there's just something wrong with you and that everybody else seems to magically get it figured out. The third leg in her framework is mindfulness versus over-identification. So this is where we can be mindful of the mistakes that we made or mindful of the ways that we messed up, or maybe we, missed this last week with our goals or whatever it is that we're working on. And we can feel disappointed. We can feel bad about it, but we don't fall into that trap and that spiral of, I always do this, right? Like whatever that script is that always wants to play whenever you fail or you encounter an obstacle or a setback, right? So it's being mindful. It's being aware of that. It's being, curious and looking at the circumstance objectively without allowing your brain to just kind of suck you in to that spiral that just keeps you kind of spinning around and around. So self-compassion is not the same as self-esteem. Neff's research that was published in the Journal of Personality found self-compassion predicts more stable self-worth than self-esteem alone, because your self-worth is not contingent on winning, on performing, or comparing yourself well against others. Self-esteem, on the other hand, oftentimes feels really fragile because it is really tied to that external performance. When we do well, we can feel good about ourselves. When we don't do good, then we feel horrible about ourselves. So it's kind of is this constant sort of like ebb and flow of emotions, sort of driving the car. And that's not going to be something that really feels stable and solid. Whereas when we focus more on that self-compassion piece, it's recognizing like, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to show up the best way I know how. And there are still going to be times that I miss the mark. It's what I do then, right? It's like what I do after I fail that ends up ultimately counting the most. A lot of times too, when we're in self-compassion versus that self-esteem mind frame, is there's going to be less comparison between ourselves and other people, less rumination. So less kind of fixating and obsessing on the shortcomings and the failures, and less anger overall. So self-compassion isn't about lowering the bar. It's about ultimately your worth and your value as a human, not being on the line every time you slip up, you make a mistake, or you fail. So let's dig in a little bit more to what the actual research on self-compassion and behavior change say. It's one thing, obviously, to say that self-compassion can protect your self-worth. It's another thing to actually see what that looks like and how things change when we actually start to operate from that lens of self-compassion. Studies on dieters found that people who responded to a lapse, so like a setback, an obstacle, quote unquote failure, like a missed workout or an off-plan meal or day, with more self-compassion, ended up reporting better mood and better self-control over eating and exercise in the hours after the slip-up happened, compared to those people who responded using that self-critical voice. Self-criticism, on the other hand, after a slip-up predicts even bigger slip-ups next time, not a correction like we mistakenly think it does. Research on commercial weight management programs found that self-compassion was associated with greater program engagement over time, not less. And when self-compassion training gets added directly into like standard programs, whether that's for weight loss or fat loss or probably really any area, trials show improved outcomes and reduced shame and guilt-driven attrition compared to standard programs that don't account for the self-compassion piece at all. Shame essentially makes people want to shrink back and hide from the very accountability structures like tracking or coaching or just showing up that would actually help them. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is going to help you show up and stay in the room even when things feel uncomfortable. Because again, we're not using shame as a motivator. We're not using fear as a motivator. It's coming to the table, recognizing that, of course, there are going to be times I don't show up or I don't do this perfectly. I don't follow through. We don't have to make it mean anything about ourselves if we're operating from that lens of self-compassion. Now, of course, the research is still growing in this area of self-compassion. And while some effects are modest, and self-compassion certainly is not a replacement for having like structure or coaching or having some actual behavior change strategy in place. That mind frame, or really like that approach, is oftentimes what is going to help you stay in that strategy long enough for it to actually work. So it's necessary, but in and of itself, it's not completely sufficient. So this is really like the exact kind of work that we do through our one-on-one coaching. If you're curious about whether or not that's a fit, go ahead and check that consult link in the show notes below. So let's talk a little bit about some of the objections that maybe you're kind of experiencing right now. Self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It's not self-pity, which often isolates and increases avoidance. And it's definitely not indulgence, which has no accountability built in at all. So again, just understanding that we are going to slip up. We are going to, have misses here and there. We look at it as like a small little blip rather than blowing it up, attacking ourselves, or just completely pretending like it didn't happen either, right? It's like we could go in either one of those directions, either completely avoiding and pretending like it didn't happen, or making it like such a big deal that, of course, we don't feel like we could get started again. Self-compassion says, okay, this is the reality of the situation. This is what happened. It's not about who you are as a person, right? So it's like, what is the next best thing I can do? What's the next right move from here? If you're operating with self-criticism behind the wheel, it's going to say something like, you know what? I can't believe you did that again. I always do this. Why even bother trying again, right? So one is going to kind of put you in that mind frame to produce like the next best step. The other one is going to produce shame and avoidance and kind of a shrinking back from your goals. And that really is like the whole difference, right? It's not like, being more compassionate with yourself in and of itself is the magic bullet, but it definitely is a key ingredient if long-term success and consistency in your strength training, your sleep habits, your nutrition habits, all of those things, if that's important to you, then you've got to learn to kind of shift out of being critical with yourself and having a little bit more compassion and grace and understanding. Okay, so what do we actually do with all this? Now that we have this information, what does this look like to actually practice this? Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, some of this is not going to be new. It's crazy how often we can use some of the same tools and strategies and apply it to different circumstances and get some crazy good results. So number one is just notice it. Are you saying to yourself, what do you actually hear your brain saying when you show up less than perfect? We don't have to argue with it. We don't have to try to change it. The first step is really just noticing, starting to become a little bit more aware. The next step, and this is an important one, is to write it down. You want to start jotting down that internal dialogue exactly as you hear it in your brain. This is really going to help you separate yourself from it a little bit so that you can start to eventually poke holes into that script that your brain is feeding you. Step 3 is to notice your reaction. When that voice pops up, what's that knee-jerk response? Is it that self-criticism? Like, is it more criticism, more shame? Or is it like, hey, you know what, kiddo? It's okay. Pick yourself up and let's try again. Are you more or less likely to follow through, right? So when that voice pops up, if it's self-criticism, do you feel more motivated or do you feel like taking less action? Do you want to run and hide? Do you want to fight? What is that stress response that is triggered for you there? Are you wanting to push back and rebel? So this is really going to tell you if you're operating from, being a little bit more critical with yourself, that that harshness or really being hard with yourself, being stern, may not be working on you the way that you think that it is. So again, that quick kind of gut check. Would I say this to my best friend? Would I say this to my husband? Would I say this to my kids? If it's like I failed, what if we just make a simple swap to had a hard week, things didn't go quite as planned, what's next? If you're hearing, I always ruin it, this might become, okay, this was one day, things went sideways. This does not have to be the whole pattern. Are there examples of times where you don't ruin something? So the tricky thing here is that a lot of times self-criticism can feel like we're being accountable or we're holding ourselves accountable. But really and truly, when we examine it closer, it's actually functioning more like sabotage. So we know that you are all in different places on your journey listening right now. Maybe some of you listening, you might be in a place where you are ready to jump into coaching and grab one of those few spots that we have left. Maybe you're newer to this and you're not quite ready to jump all the way into the pool, but you recognize that you want a little bit more. Wherever you're at, we have something for you. So you can go to thestrongherway.com/work with us to get started. Now, you have two ways that we can go from here. We always kind of have those two choices. We can either stay where we are, we can listen to this, we can kind of store it away with all the other nice to have information and not really do anything with it. Because let's be honest, sometimes we think listening is the action step. If you choose not to do anything from here, you stay stuck in that same cycle, right? Of starting and stopping. You try to be more strict next time, more tough on yourself, thinking that it must just be something wrong with you, that you're lacking willpower, you're lacking discipline. And if you were just a little bit more rigid with yourself, it would finally click. Now, the other choice is that we actually take a step and we do something with what we heard. You do the journaling, right? Maybe you re-listen to this, you take notes, you actually schedule some time to do the journaling and to think about what stuck out to you. And decide a next action step. Maybe you go to thestrongherway.com/work with us. You take the next step there, whatever that is for you. You start interrupting that voice every time she comes up with the criticism and the shame and the guilt and the beating you up, and you actually start making changes. You start to notice then that you're not quite on edge all the time. Maybe you have more mental capacity, more calmness in your brain. You just start naturally making better choices without it always being a fight. That really is what is available to you if you decide to hop off being super critical of yourself, beating yourself up, being harsh, and start implementing more of that gracious and compassionate approach with yourself. I know it can feel hard. I know it can feel scary because that really used to be me, and the way that I would operate was just do harder, do more, try harder, do better, be better the next time. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having high standards, high expectations, big goals for yourself. We just want to check in with what is that mental and that emotional fuel that we're using to drive the action. One is going to be extremely exhausting. One is going to keep you starting and stopping and just constantly feeling like you're fighting with yourself. The other approach holds you accountable in a way that is truly loving, truly kind, truly respectful, and that's going to elicit the actual real life change that you are wanting to see happen. So if you like what you hear here, please share the episode with a gal in your community that needs to hear this message. And if you are looking for your best next step, you can head to thestrongherway.com. Click on the Work With Me page, take a look at what we've got, and figure out what that next best step is for you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I hope that this episode this week encourages you, challenges you, blesses you, and helps you take the next step in your fitness journey. Until next week, have a great day. We'll talk to you then. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to The Strong Her Way. If you're ready to redefine your relationship with food, exercise, and yourself,
Remember, it's all about building habits and routines that fit into your busy life without restriction or deprivation. I hope today's episode inspired you to take the next step on your journey to a healthier, happier you. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you found this helpful, please leave a review and share it with other women who need a little extra encouragement. Together, we can all become stronger. Until next time, stay strong and keep moving forward.